think we can get started with you, Teddy. Jeff. Jeff's your name on the screen, so no, we all know you're Teddy. So now we can go back to speaker view. So we can be up close and personal with Teddy. Thank you. Take it away.
Thank you, everybody, for being here. We'll just go ahead and jump right into it. We'll do a little, just kind of a little 3-minute meditation to set the tone for the interview and the meeting. So we'll just simply start by finding the body itself. Maybe we've had a fairly busy day, working from home. Maybe we've had an overactive mind doing some future thinking. So let's just simply recognize some of the resources we have within us and maybe tapping into this awareness that can be out in front of ourselves, and maybe just taking that awareness and looping it back to the body itself. And using this awareness to kind of wash through the body, not really fixating on any particular area of the body, but kind of washing through the body as a whole unit. And letting this awareness kind of ebb and flow through the body to just start to experience the felt sense and the feeling tone of our bodies today. Knowing that our bodies are always transforming, to know that our bodies are always changing. And as we start to experience the felt sense of the body, we look to the body and we don't really judge any sort of feeling. We just cultivate a curiosity around what we're experiencing. And as we drop in a little more deeply, we start to recognize the weight and the heaviness of the body, the density to this body. And the way we experience this is by just simply recognizing the ground beneath us. So as we start to look to this relationship between our bodies and the ground beneath us, we go a little further to check in with this relationship between our bodies and the earth itself. And this is where we kind of start to get a bit of perspective, where we start to see how almost everything we need is really provided freely by the earth itself. And the air we breathe and the water we drink and the food we eat. And pretty much this provided freely, offered by the earth itself, and her just doing this naturally, never really asking for anything in return. But I myself always kind of promise the earth that I'll do my best to stay awake, while I'm here. And then lastly, we start to pay attention to the breath. No need to really manipulate the breath at all. No need to change the breath, but just start to contemplate the breath as just the breath. And start to follow that breath, maybe from the in-breath, coming into this body, expanding this body, and following that breath right back out into the world before us. Starting to think about and contemplate how this just happens naturally, how our bodies just naturally do their part. This beautiful part where our bodies are naturally exchanging the air, the breath with the plants around us. And we start to see how interconnected all of this is. And how we don't really think it through. It's just happening on its own. And it's hard not to be awestruck or awe-inspired when we start to contemplate the breath. Thinking about some of the teachings that Dacher offers, you know, the awe in itself of taking a moment and following the breath, this life force, and this exchange with the world around us. It's really difficult to not be awestruck by this simple one breath. And the natural nurturing qualities that we experience when we just start to follow the breath, how it drops us right back into something natural. Especially when we recognize the ground beneath us and this body itself. The next thing we know, we find our grounding, we find our footing in a world that can be very uncertain. But we use the breath to help bring us back time and time again. We use this body. We recognize how much the earth does for us. And we continue to let this process help us and guide us to let go into each moment with a sense of grace and really a sense of confidence in this life. And that the more we let go into this life by using the body and using the breath and the ground beneath us, the more we do that, the more we start to find our natural rhythm. And we begin to flow, no matter what's in front of us. And we keep it simple, a simple practice. So together as a community, we follow this breath. We follow this beautiful, wonderful, awe-inspiring breath that fills up this body and expands this body. And we exchange that breath by offering it out into the world itself. And sending out our own thoughts and prayers out into this world for those people who are being affected by the crisis that's going on right now. We send out our prayers and well wishes to them with our out breath in the hopes that they find some path that helps them ease their pain or their discomfort, or just simply helps them navigate the times that we're in right now. So again, we breathe in this sense of compassion, and we extend that compassion out into this beautiful world, offering this breath, offering this exchange, recognizing the interconnectedness of this all. Bring the hands to prayer in front of our heart center. May all beings find their natural rhythm. May all beings continue to cultivate joy. May all beings be safe and secure. May all beings tap into grace. And may all beings be free of suffering. And may we continue throughout our days, when the world spins us, to bring it back to the body, to remember our practice, to recognize the body, the weight of the body, the ground beneath us, and the breath, to just get perspective, to get to know ourselves on a deeper level, and also to make sure that we're thinking in a way that's being of service to ourselves and the people around us. And we see the wisdom that this cultivates. We see the compassion that this cultivates. We nurture and honor this wisdom. We nurture and honor this place of wisdom. And we share that wisdom with the world in the way that we live this life. Namaste. Thank you, everybody. I'm excited for Dacher today. So I'm going to hang out and listen to this awesome interview. We'll see you guys.
Thank you, Teddy. Really appreciate that.
Here's your...
Thank you, Teddy.
Teddy.
Teddy left this on the seat. I feel it was a trick he was playing on me. Okay, Dacher, do we have you online?
I am here. Oop.
Woo!
You are. Well, so Dacher, the way we usually run these is as a sort of a brief interview. I also know that you are like a train when these things start running, so I'll just give you the occasional nudge and let you go. You're part of the MEA family. You were one of our early teachers. You're a Christmas time teacher, so I have this nativity vibe every time I see you. It makes me happy. And we've also had the opportunity to become friends. So I'm just thrilled that you're here with us today. You're the head of the Greater Good Science Center at UC Berkeley. And I was actually doing some research into what you have studied in the past. And it's actually kind of mind-blowing. I hadn't quite realized. I'd sort of known you as the awe guy and the kind of power and authority and status guy, but you've done anger and embarrassment, laughter and anger. You've done how yearbooks predict people's positivity and life outcomes, which is a whole discourse and discussion unto itself. Crazy. Obviously the work you're doing on awe and how that connects to sort of deep sources of pleasure. Your work on power and status, and negotiating morality, which again is just fascinating. Dacher, thank you so very much for joining us today.
Well, it's good to be with you, Jeff, my dear friend down in Baja, and see Teddy and feel like I'm almost there.
Fantastic. Dacher, tell us about your work. I think we're going to focus on awe. And I think that in these times that we're all going through, there's something to be learned from your work, but perhaps more broadly as well. I think also there's a lot that you're doing that can take us outside of this kind of anxiety bubble that we're in as well.
Yeah, so my work on awe is, it's really remarkable. When in 2003, John Haidt and I published a paper on awe, and there were 11 papers on awe, or even just marginally related to it, in all of the social sciences. And there were tens of thousands of papers on fear, thousands of papers on anger, and very little on awe. And so we started by reviewing the literature, the philosophical literature, and the mystical literature. The train is starting. and so, and there we said, hey, awe is about being around vast things that you don't understand, that are mysterious. And then we've done work.
You trace that back to Protagoras, right? I mean, right
Yeah.
back the early.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's, you know, it's the Greek philosophers, when they said wonder and awe are the beginnings of thought. You know, we're like, well, why am I alive? And why do I die? And what am I trying to achieve in the middle of life? These are all questions that are fueled by awe. And then we started to discover in our lab that there's a lot of everyday awe, right? There's awe in other people and how inspiring they are and how courageous. And there's awe outside looking at plants and flowers and dance and big ideas and so forth. And then, you know, I'm happy to dig more deeply, but to me, for the times, this being an anxious time. But, you know, it's funny, Jeff, like surveying my undergrads, a couple hundred undergrads online, we did this neat Zoom exercise where I asked them, like, what are you worried about? They told me what they're worried about. Where's your imagination going? And it was filled with awe, right? It was just like, I want to work on criminal justice. I want to work on health disparities. I want to make global health better. I want to get along better with my parents, whatever. So I think this moment in part is about refinding awe, you know, getting back to local awe in other people, awe off of screens, and so on. So I think it's a very timely topic to be considering.
What is the place of awe in science?
Yeah, you know, so there are two kind of big things that awe does for us, right? And I think that this is really for interesting evolutionary reasons that we can touch upon. And the first thing that awe does, and we've got a ton of data on this, right, is that awe embeds you in the social network that you call your people, right? And so when you dance and you feel awestruck, or you hear music that gives you goosebumps, or you're struck by a painting, you're at a political rally, or you're doing a ceremony and suddenly you're tearing up, those are all awe-related signs that you're with your people, right? And so we need to find our tribe to survive. That is the signature strength of the human species, is our ability to fold into social collectives, and awe gets us there. And then to your question about science, awe, the other thing that awe does is it's about intellectual humility, where you're like, man, I don't understand how there could be so many stars, right? Or I didn't know that DNA could do that. Or, you know, the mind starts cranking, and we've got data, a lot of people have interesting data that awe fuels your search for meaning, right? Scientific meaning, spiritual meaning, personal meaning, purpose, midlife meaning, you know, and that's why MEA is such I mean, it was so embarrassing to teach awe there, because you come in, you go there and it's like, I don't even have to talk, you know, here it is, you know, hits you. But then the challenge is to with all the passions, is to kind of channel us and use reason to get us to the right answers, right? So awe is about social embeddedness, and then finding your earphone, finding answers to things you find mysterious.
You found all kinds of sort of second and third order benefits from the experience as well, right?
Yeah.
Can you go into some of those? Sure.
You know, so let's follow the neurophysiology of, so, you know, if you take a little, if you have a little burst of awe, right? You stop and look at a tree. Our sky right now is so beautiful every day. You know, there's less pollution, the inspiring stories of people doing things. If you just take a moment to feel awe, what happens in terms of these secondary the one class of benefits beyond embedding into social networks and discovering things is you feel like you have more time. You're less stressed out by daily stuff. I'm sure everybody's had that experience. Like, man, you know, I used to be really bothered by that weird sound in my engine. I don't care, right? So you're less stressed out. You're more charitable. But then where it gets really interesting, Jeff, is when you track the neurophysiology of it. And so we know, like psychedelics, and like meditation and like spiritual experience, brief experiences of awe shut down the default mode network. And that's this band of parts of your cortex that are about the self, or the ego, right? Are you doing the right thing? Are you on task? Are you achieving your goals? That's the default mode network. Little bursts of awe, quiet that down. And then we published a paper showing, and it really got a lot of people talking about it, that awe reduces the inflammation in your body, the heating up of your body to fight pathogens. When you have a flu, when you're fighting the virus, it's bad for your body if it's always activated, and awe quiets that response down. So it's a pretty powerful, good thing to be cultivating.
And then you talk a lot about this sort of tribe, how it helps you form tribes.
Yeah.
You mentioned that awe makes us more collaborative, more empathetic. How does that work?
Yeah, in a lot of different disciplines, and this'll, our MEA members will know this just obviously, but there's this really interesting problem that you face with cooperation and collaboration, which has come in under different names, but the cooperation problem, the trust problem, the commitment problem, which is, if I'm part of a network, my organization, my neighborhood, my lab, whatever, the political group I'm part of, this group, how do I make sure that I have the right balance of self-interest and caring about other people's interests? Because fundamentally, to get along with others, you have to want to advance their interests. And this is a hard problem in social networks. And a lot of the difficulties of networks have to do with bad apples and Machiavellians trying to take people down, right? And that's well documented in the organizational literature. And what we've started to find is awe just commits you to other people's interests, right? It makes you think about other people's interests alongside your own. It makes you share resources instinctively. It makes you humble, right? So one of my favorite findings, if I'm feeling awe and I'm engaging in a conversation with strangers and I'm told to talk about my strengths and my weaknesses, the typical narcissist will talk, ad nauseum about their strengths. And when you feel awe, you're kind of interested in other people's strengths, right? You sort of quiet this self-focus. So once you have that in place, you have a lot of good actions. And then the other side to it is awe makes you really creative. One of my favorite findings in this is high school kids, not a great time of awe, I might add, in school, especially in the United States these days. High school students at poor, under-resourced schools who feel awe are doing better in school, right? So if you can just plant some seeds in these students who don't have a lot of obvious opportunities for awe and get them curious, good things happen in terms of their work they do. So a lot of good reasons for it benefiting our collaboration.
Before we move into sort of how we might practice awe in these times of self-seclusion, I just want to ask you one last question around the biology of awe.
Yeah.
You mentioned goosebumps. I once held an event at one of the NASA venues, and it was underneath the Saturn V rocket, which is as big as a building, on the back end, just where the jets are, where the rockets are. And people would walk into this auditorium and see this rocket and just burst into tears. What's going on? What is that biology that's creating bumps and so on?
And I have to say, your story just gave me the goosebumps. And that's interesting in its own right. Why do I get the chills when somebody else is talking about an experience I have no connection to, right? But I do have a connection through our friendship. So, thank you for asking about physiology, because I always feel like I start rambling on about physiology. But, so our lab, studying all these past 8 to 10 years, followed this pathway of understanding the physiology of awe that has been gaining traction, which is awe is related to reduced activation in the default mode network, the ego-related places of the brain that are quieted by psychedelic states are quieted by ordinary experiences of awe. That's cool. Awe is related to increased vagal tone or vagus nerve activation. The vagus nerve, bundle of nerves, starts at the top of your spinal cord, helps you vocalize, slows your heart rate, opens your chest, makes you feel warm. Awe produces that. Awe is related to increased oxytocin, which probably most of our people listening in have heard of, you know, this little chemical that makes you connect. And then we got to what you have, and then awe is related to the goose tingles, you know, the chills. And then we kept seeing these findings of people crying during experiences of awe, you know, and like when we were last at MEA with Molly and you guys, you know, people were crying all the time. I started like the last few days, like I just show up and start crying, you know, and it's kind of weird. It's like, wait a minute, I love this and I love these people and this is family. This is transcendent. Why am I crying? And there's this wonderful paper by Ad Vingerhoots, he's Dutch, and he's got all these great data, and it starts to reveal something. This is why we are interested in physiology, which is when you're a baby and you cry, first experiences of tears through the lacrimal glands that water your eyes, it's mainly when you feel pain, you signal to big people around you and they come and comfort you. And so you have these vast sources of goodness come in and provide comfort. As a teenager, studies show, you move out of that and you cry when you're around authority figures, right? So when I would get in trouble as a teenager, which I did a lot of.
Dacher, I still do.
We were only 18. So, you know, I would like, God, I can't help it. I'm crying, you know, and then it gets really interesting. So the theme there is you're tearing up around vast things, powerful things that are encompassing you. And then as you transition to adulthood, adults tear up around vast things that really matter to them, right? It's this really interesting developmental transformation. And studies of adults, you know, you show them somebody who's really courageous and you're just blown away by their character, you start crying, right? You see the big spaceship, you start crying. You know, beautiful music, right? Which is an all-encompassing system of sound that surrounds you, you cry. You cry at picnics and gatherings because of the vastness. So it becomes part of awe.
What's the difference between beauty and awe?
Yeah. That's, you know, that question dominated, I mean, it was Immanuel Kant, the great philosopher, Edmund Burke, both in the 18th century. Adam Smith wrote about it, I mean, it was just this big question of sometimes I hear music and it feels awe-inspiring. Sometimes it feels beautiful, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes a sunset can be beautiful. Sometimes it's awe-inspiring. And the short story, and there's a lot of convergent science on this, is awe is about mystery, and it renders you small and just makes you humble. And beauty is about things that you understand and that give you a sense of agency. Like, wow, I can go into this field of flowers and enjoy its wonders. So, and we've got really cool data. Our audience can go to alancowan.com and look at our data maps of emotional experience. They're really wild. And we've got some awe and beauty findings there. So awe is about just the self dissolves and you feel like you're merging with something, and beauty doesn't have that.
So last question, and then we'll move into dyads with people, and then maybe we'll have a little time at the back end before you jump off for questions from the group. But what has this time of isolation taught you about awe?
I mean, it's so interesting, Jeff. Like, first I got a big wave of findings or requests. Like, I study touch, and now you can't hug people, you can't handshake, and so that's been an interest. And now people are talking about isolation. And, you know, we know, as one example, if you don't feel socially supported or connected, 120,000 people in the United States die each year because of that, because it just hurts your nervous system, hurts your immune system. That's why calls like these are really important. And it's been striking. I think, you know, there are interesting data suggesting it takes 2 to 4 weeks collectively to make sense of a trauma, right? Like a terrorist attack. And we're kind of landing in that moment, right? Where it's like, okay, things are kind of plateauing in many places. You know, there are hot spots, et cetera. But what is this? And I've been struck, the conversations keep returning to like, wow, maybe I was finding awe in the wrong places. You know, maybe I was hopping on a plane to go do something, and it was mixed when there's a lot of awe around me. And people really are arriving somewhat unexpectedly at that possibility that, you know, you can just go for a walk and find as much awe as trekking to the Himalayas. You know, that maybe I don't need to watch so much CNN, and I can tap into beautiful music. I just got called by Spotify. There's this big movement right now. A lot of their data are showing people are going back to music that gave them awe, right? I was listening to Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band and George Harrison, just like, I got to get back to like that stuff. So it's an interesting time for this emotion, and I think it'll get us back to where we should find it.
Cool. I know George would be grateful that you identify Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts with him and not those other guys.
My favorite.
Okay, and just for the record, everyone, Dacher also lives in Pescadero and experiences awe here often.
I was supposed to be there. Yeah, it's changed my life.
Yeah.
And as has our friendship.
Oh, thank you.
Oh.
Now that's an awe right there. That's awe.
Okay. So we're gonna split into groups. Zoe, what do you think? 15 minutes? 10 minutes?
Yeah. Will we have time on the back end? Dacher, how long do you have to spend with us, just to make sure?
I start teaching at 2.
Okay.
So
And if we're breaking into dyads of 2, I think that 10 minutes is plenty.
Let's do 10. Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
And that'll give us some time on the end for Q&A with Dacher.
Perfect. So that would then be, the question is, how are you finding ways of experiencing awe in your newly sequestered, secluded, isolated life?
Man, I want these answers.
Yeah.
All righty. You will be prompted to join your breakout rooms. Dacher, Jeff, Leslie, do not join a room when prompted. Thank you. Let me just double check. Perfect. Okay. Open all rooms.
Mariana? Okay. We are off mute, just that you know, Christina. Everyone is experiencing the awe of your period stopping.
But it didn't. I've just decided that it should. No, it never stopped. It had never stopped. I just thought that it would have by now. But
We're all in a room in the academy, and because the screen's facing this way, no one feels like they're being heard in the background.
You can turn the screen around. Is it easy to move? I want to see everybody. Hi.
All right.
You've got Chip there and Teddy.
Hey, Chip.
So it looks like there's several people.
Yep. I'm just trying to.
Can I help at all? You have to do it, right, as host?
Is there a way, Dacher, while I have you, seeing as we're in a dyad with you for 10 minutes, is there a way of using awe strategically then? If you're trying to get a collaborative result and trust, can you literally sort of do something awesome and then have that conversation rather than having that conversation first? Do you see what I mean? It's like...
Oh, yeah. I mean, and I think it gets, this is where, you know, so people who are really worried about demagogues and dictators, hey, Teddy, nice to see you. People worry about the abuse of power, feel like they exploit awe. Hey, Chad, nice to see you. And then, you know, you take a culture like Japan, right, which has a pretty vertical, or sort of vertical hierarchical approach to work. Their awe and how it's embedded and how it imbues power structures and authority figures makes them more collaborative, but it is an issue with respect to sense of agency of people within an organization. So there are a lot of techniques, a lot of deep concerns about the abuse of awe in that way, right? Is Trump, I don't think Trump inspires awe in the people who love him. I think it's more about like, he's throwing a punch. Yeah.
Awful, right?
Yeah, and he's throwing a punch at the elites and so forth. But there is a lot of worry about exploitative uses of awe. And I think for good reason, you know.
And in our conversation, we tend to focus like on the sort of the upside of awe, right? It's the beauty, the music, the dance, the relational side.
Yeah.
And it does seem to be that there's this sort of shadow side to it as well. Do disasters inspire awe?
Yeah, you know, and this is cool, you know, so I don't have these data, although we're working on it, but one of my Japanese collaborators, Masataka Takayama, got awe data from the typhoon. And I was actually in Japan when the typhoon hit. It was one of their worst typhoons in history. And then he's got data on COVID-19. And the more awe you feel, the better you do. So if you approach disaster openly, like, wow, this is a force beyond my control, you adapt better to that disaster, which is interesting. And I can't wait till he publishes those findings. So.
Wow.
Wow.
Dacher, I have a question about when I think of awe and being awe-inspired, I connect it, like the other side of the coin is gratitude. I just overwhelmed with gratitude when I'm in that space.
Yeah, you know, around that? Yeah, you know, and this is, so you should, there's a wonderful book by a philosopher, Paul Woodruff, called Reverence. And I think we don't have, I have wanted to study that idea for a long time. Out of awe, people feel like things are sacred, right? And they're really grateful. Like, I'm gonna hold this rock that I found backpacking, or this little token from MEA, or, you know, I want the words that Teddy said in a meditation because it gave me this feeling. And that's gratitude, right? That's like this deep, this thing is sacred. It was given to me. It has this, it came out of awe. And Woodruff really makes the case that a lot of Eastern philosophy has that dynamic where you meditate, you encounter the Tao or Brahman, you know, in Hinduism, and then you just feel like, God, this is really precious, right? I feel grateful for this, and I wish we had those findings, but I think it's real.
I got goosebumps just listening to you say that. When you were connecting the sacred with the awe, with the gratitude, like, I just want to live there all the time.
Are you videoable? And Beverly? Beverly and Amanda, can we see you, or are you just on the phone?
Oh, hi, I'm on the phone.
Let's hear you anyway.
I'm listening. I'm sorry. I'm not in a breakout group because I'm also working. So I cannot be videoing right now.
Don't tell anyone.
Hey, Dacher.
Hey, Teddy.
You know, you're talking about this collaborator of yours in Japan talking about being awestruck about the typhoon and stuff. And it's kind of interesting you said that, because I know with my own practice in how I'm relating to this virus, I started to talk with Amanda about how pretty the little,
Yeah.
it looks like,
Yeah.
And kind of coming at it from another angle, like the beauty in this, which we're perceiving as, really a monster, but
Yeah.
trying to take myself out of it in a way to where I'm looking at kind of softening what is actually happening. I don't know. Do you know what I'm getting at?
That's fucking awesome. And if,
I mean,
if I said that to right now in the United States, it'd be trouble, right? Like, hey, there are people dying, their lungs are filled, but you're right. We have to, and like Michael Pollan's psychedelic work, with not his work, but at NYU, like terminal disease, you have cancer, you have a tumor.
Yeah.
And in psychedelics, you accept the tumor, right? Yeah. And in some sense, the radical awe view, Teddy, is exactly what you're saying. Like, yeah, this is part of nature, man, and nature is beautiful.
And definitely not to discount the suffering involved.
No.
So like, it's life happening on its own terms. And I'm kind of just awestruck by how massive this is. And also looking at this little thing that's really kind of a beautiful these little balls that are really beautiful, psychedelic little looking thing,
With its own evolutionary design. I know.
Sure.
Yeah. That's really cool. That's a really deep insight. And it's interesting. We're working with chronic pain patients, and I'm so excited. First study I wasn't part of, but an awe program led to reductions in chronic pain. And we should talk about this, Teddy, like building this into your meditation, because it's going to be, hi, Christine.
Hi, Dacher.
Man, I'm in the wrong place.
Come back to us.
We are self-isolating together.
With the gazpacho.
I know that gazpacho.
So should we bring them back?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna hit the close all rooms and they'll come back in 60 seconds. I have a totally random question once I've done that. Why is the word awful? Why has it come to have such negative connotations, and we use the word awe-inspiring instead of awful to connote being full of awe?
Because, that's a key question. The etymology of...
Wait and ask that when everybody comes back on.
Okay.
That's a really good one. Hi, everybody. Welcome back.
Sorry, I hijacked questions.
No, that's such a good question. I have to wait for everybody so they can hear it.
Hi, Ben.
Welcome back.
Peter Arbuckle, I'm glad to see you're dressed for this meeting.
Are you wearing pants?
I think you need to explain that, Jeffrey.
Peter never wears pants.
I'm not commenting.
All right, so can you tell if everybody's back? Good to see you.
Yeah, everyone is almost back. Welcome back, everyone. We will open the floor to questions for Dacher in a minute, but I had one just on the tail end of our miniature breakout. Why is the word awful, why does it carry such a negative connotation? And why can't we use the word awful to say that we are full of awe?
I know. And so the, emotions and words always have histories. You have cultural histories. They change across different languages and cultures. And the word awe that we use today in English, which means a wonder and reverence for things that are vast that you don't understand, traces back to Norwegian and Old English, I think, from the 9th century. And back then, the world was different, right? And nature was more violent, humans were more violent, death was much more common. Probably the average life expectancy was 40 or 45. 20% of children died in childbirth. So it was just, life had more death and horror. And as a result, the word had these more horrifying connotations. It meant dread and horror mixed with a bit of respect. And then with the Age of Enlightenment, the word starts to really change meaning, like words always do in languages. And so today it largely means I'm amazed and a little bit scared by things that are really vast and mysterious. So that's why.
Beautiful. Other questions for Dacher, or anything you want to share from your discussions?
I have a question.
Thank you. Go ahead, Renee.
So my question is, are there things that you do or that we could think about doing that opens ourselves up to experiencing more awe? Because we so often get, or me, I should speak for myself, just get into my routine and, you know, my work and my electronics and, you know, and it's easy to not be aware and open to it.
Yeah, you know, so I was talking at break, Renee, with Teddy and Christine and Jeff about, I'm really excited that this pain doctor has developed a kind of an awe program based on a lot of our science where you can just build it in every day. And so I would be thinking about awe-inspiring music as part of your day, a walk that you go out and find a little piece of awe every day. I would be thinking about sources of stories, people's stories that are inspiring, historical figures who inspire you. And you might try Service Space's Daily Good as a kind of an awe-inspiring fact every day. And so these doctors are building an awe curriculum that they've tested, and we're going to be testing during COVID-19. And I can send Jeff, I've curated like 100 awe practices, and he can share them. And then, you know, the challenge with all of this stuff is to tailor to you, right? Mm-hmm. You may be a spectacular singer and you should be singing once a week, or you should be chanting. I'm not, so that's not part of my awe menu. But I am addicted to walking outdoors. And so that's just every day I do that. Mm-hmm. And then be looking for it in your practices like yoga or meditation. So I'll send those along and then see what you come up with.
Great, thank you.
You may have, it's Sarah, you may have actually just answered my question.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi there, it's so nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
I've been home alone in Brooklyn for 26 days, and in New York, it's actually not completely safe to be running around subways and such, because there's so much density. So it's really, you're really kind of self-isolating inside home, no nature walks, right? Yeah. So you may have answered this, which is kind of like, what can you do inside your home? Yeah. I'm curious if you have any routine you're following since you're kind of home. Is there a routine, a start and end to your day, any practice you can share?
Yeah, you know, so it's so funny because as you know, Sarah, I'm more of a scientist than a practitioner, and, you know, but so I struggle with this too, you know, and what I make sure I do is take a minute to find a piece of urban design or beauty that makes you feel awe, and just sit with it and look at it and slow it down, right? I make sure if I asked you, I bet there are pieces of music, and you played a few at MEA, but think of a couple that really give you awe, right? For me, it's minimalism, Vox cello suites, whatever, and get into that space, right? And allow that for you. I think that I would, you know, and one of the good things that MEA does is it makes you think about, like, what are the written words that really you can return to? Is it Walt Whitman? And then, you know, I think so video sources, if you you know, frankly, one of our strongest elicitors of awe is the BBC's Planet Earth. And I'm not kidding, man. I mean, that is being used for pain reduction right now.
Wow.
So think about visuals. And then, you know, calling upon Molly's writing, like, think about ways to write about awe and share that with your friends.
Is remembered awe as impactful as experienced awe?
We don't know, Jeff, but we do know, like, if I asked you, think about a time it really hit you hard, we would see physiological changes associated with awe. So that's pretty good.
Dacher, I know we're running up on time. Zoe, do we have one more question that we can share?
Yes. If you have a question, wave. Let's go to Bonnie. Oh, there you are, Bonnie. Go ahead.
Hey, Bonnie.
Okay. Where's your bobblehead? That brings me awe. It's not handy, huh?
No, but I know that thing is ridiculous.
Okay, that was just a hello from Bonnie.
What about Lydia?
Lydia,
yes. Here you go, Lydia. Oh, I unmuted you, and then there you go.
Hi. So if you guys can take
Lydia.
a look behind me, that is our moon.
oh, awesome.
Because I'm in London and I'm showing you the moon out my window. And it's super pink. And when it came up, it was huge. So it's lovely to see you.
Nice to see you, Lydia. And I will recommend Cloud Spotting, which is a book on clouds. Man, once you start watching clouds, your life is set, along with moon watching.
Thanks for bringing us a view from the future, Lydia.
Yeah, thank you, Lydia. And I also want to thank you for being here at, 11 o'clock at night for you. Our Europe friends are late for these calls, so I really appreciate you guys being here.
I want to call out the Science of Happiness podcast. It is free to download, and you can listen to Dacher almost all day, every day, for at least next week if you so choose. Dacher, I know there's a ton of other resources on the Greater Good Science Center that people can browse through and get like a full education. You're going to send us those 100 techniques for self-awing.
Yeah. And then I think we should grow them ourselves. We should build it as a group.
Beautiful. And if you have ideas that you want to share with Dacher, send them to me and I will pass them on to him. And with that, we have hit our hour, our awesome hour. Dacher, we'll give you 3 minutes to get to your next lecture.
I don't move, but I have to switch Zooms. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you, Dacher.
Great seeing you guys.
Thank yourself off.